Hello, this video is a bit different from what I usually do, but it's related to themes of conspiracy theories though. And now what I'm going to be looking at is the claims that there's a scene in The Shining in which Stanley Kubrick is confessing to having made and faked the moon landing footage. What I want to do is go through this scene and talk about why I think he's referencing the moon landings in the film. And I don't think it's got anything to do with a personal confession. Now, I'm partly doing this because The Shining is one of my most favourite films. I couldn't even tell you how many times I've seen it. It's an endlessly fascinating film. The whole film is like a giant puzzle within itself. It's multi-layered. It has multiple cultural references. It has a complicated, seemingly simple narrative, but when you analyse it, you find that there are peculiar layers of ambiguity and all kinds of complexities that aren't immediately apparent when you first watch it. So what I want to do is, well, first of all, is just watch the scene that it supposedly is Kubrick confessing to having faked the moon landings.
Mom? Mom? Mom, are you in there?
Okay, so just in case you haven't seen The Shining, I'll just recap quickly. It's about a man who accepts a job as the winter caretaker in a hotel. The hotel is isolated in Colorado and shuts down for the winter, and the family are snowbound and completely isolated for about 5 months while he looks after the hotel. While he's there, he slowly starts to descend into madness and starts either hallucinating or starts talking to ghosts within the hotel. People claim that within this scene there are 3 references to the moon landings. Well, there's a very obvious one, which is that Danny, the boy in the film, is wearing an Apollo 11 rocket on the front of his jersey. Well, that's completely unambiguous. The other one is that people say that the carpet looks like the launch pad that the Apollo 11 took off from. I think that's a bit more tenuous. It's possible. And the last one is he enters a room in the hotel that we find out earlier contains something that Danny shouldn't be seeing. Now, in the book that this film is based on, the room is 217, and conspiracy theorists have postulated that Kubrick changed it to 237 in reference to the 237,000 miles that it is from the Earth to the Moon. Well, I'm not saying that's not true. It's possible. Another version of why that was changed is that the hotel that was used for the exterior shots had a room 217 in the hotel and didn't want it used in they didn't want 217 used in the film. I mean, these interior shots aren't actually in the hotel. These are in a studio in London or somewhere in England. So the story is that Kubrick changed it to 237 because there isn't a 237 in the hotel that's used for the exterior shots. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But it might be that he is referencing the moon landings here. But there is one completely unambiguous reference, as I said, which is that Danny's wearing an Apollo 11 on the front of his jersey. Now, if this was any other director, you might say you're reading too much into it. But this is Kubrick, and it's not possible to read too much into Kubrick's films, particularly Shining. It was a film that he obsessed over and reshot over and over again. So it's extremely unlikely that this is not a direct reference that Kubrick's making. So the question is, why is he referencing the moon landings? Well, within the narrative of the film, I think it's entirely justified because I think it has two references. I think it's a reference to the whole film. In the film, you have 3 people isolated from the rest of the human race. The Apollo 11 put 3 men on the moon who were completely isolated from the human race. So in a sense, what he's saying is that these people might as well be on the moon. But there's also a direct reference to what happens in this particular scene. Now, if we want to go back, what do we first see? We see Danny. The camera is close in on Danny, so we're close in his little world. It's a little boy playing with his cars, lost in his own world of childhood innocence. The camera pulls back to this shot here, and suddenly we see that Danny's he suddenly seems much more vulnerable. He suddenly seems that he's in a bigger world that he's not aware of, a complicated world. A maze-like carpet. His childhood world is disturbed by a ball rolling towards him. But when he looks, there's no one there. Now, this is obviously very ominous and disturbing. Now, the next thing he does is he stands up. Almost as if he is the Apollo 11 launching. Then he moves towards room 237, which, as I said, we've already been told is a room that Danny's been told to stay out of by the chef of the hotel, who shares Danny's psychic abilities. Now we see Danny, from this shot, we see Danny's point of view as he enters room 237, which is open. So presumably someone's in there. Now, as far as Danny is concerned, there only are 2 other people in the hotel, his mother and his father.
Mom, are you in there?
And the shot fades to his mother. So we see that it's not his mother that's in there. Now, exactly what does happen to Danny in that room, we only know the consequences of it. We know that he's attacked when he's in that room. Exactly who by, whether it's his father or whether it's some malevolent force in the hotel, it's ambiguous. But the point of this scene, I think, is to suggest that Danny starts in his own little world. Like the Apollo mission, he stands up. He takes off.
Mom?
And he's going to another world. What this scene is suggesting to me is that Danny has been forced to leave his world of childhood innocence and is entering another world, a frightening adult world that he doesn't understand. And that, to me, is what the moon landing reference is in this. It's referring to the fact that the three people are isolated, and also that in this scene, Danny is entering another world. The world he's entering is...
Mom, are you there?
I think the reason it fades there is because it's saying to the viewer that we have to look away now because something's going to happen that is too awful to look at. Essentially, the scene is referencing child abuse. That is really what this scene is referencing. It's referencing a child being forced out of their little world, entering a dreadful world that we have to look away from because it's so terrible. And it's also a world that it's so alien to this child that this child might as well be going to the moon. Now, is there anything in this scene that fits with the narrative of faking the moon landings? Well, no, there isn't. There's no implication later that Danny pretended to go to that room and didn't really go. There's nothing in this narrative that's about faking anything. So I don't see in what sense this scene is Kubrick confessing to the moon landings. There's nothing in it that suggests he's confessing to anything. I mean, like I said, The Shining is a film that references a lot of things. It references Native American genocide. It references the fact that the dollar is a fiat currency and is not linked to gold anymore. It references a lot of things, none of which is Kubrick personally confessing to anything. So I reject completely that this is anything to do with any conspiracy theory or anything to do with Kubrick confessing to anything at all. It's a scene that has a narrative justification within the film. Their moon landing reference is entirely justified within the narrative of the film. It doesn't need any broader context to it than that. So that's my take on why Kubrick references Apollo 11 and the moon landings in The Shining.